Need a fun free indoor activity? Well, the Contemporary Arts Museum has you covered with its new exhibition, Out of Stock. This inspiring exhibit features work from Houston teens and was curated and created by CAM's 14th Teen Council. The artwork really makes you think and reflect on big ideas like consumerism and identity. Out of Stock is made by teens, but everyone will enjoy it. The exhibit is running now until October 19th, so head to camh.org to learn more. And don't forget, CAM is always free. I'll see you there. Today on CityCast Houston, we're still dealing with the aftermath of the deadly flooding in the Texas Hill Country. The death toll has surpassed 100 people, including many Houstonians. So many of us have been asking, could this have been prevented? Houston Chronicle's Chris Tomlinson says yes, so I'm bringing him on to talk about it. But first, I'm talking to Rachel Kherkher, a local mom and former Camp Mystic camper, about how she's trying to uplift our local community one ribbon at a time. It's Wednesday, July 9th. I'm Raheel Ramzanali, and here's what Houston's talking about. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us. What is your connection to Camp Mystic?
Camp Mystic, I went there 4 summers. My mom and aunt also went. Starting in 2005, that is when I went, and it is a home away from home. I didn't return after 4 summers due to scoliosis surgery, and this camp is built with so much love. Tweety, the director, personally called my mom just to check on me for not returning and to check on me from my spinal surgery. So I really have so much love for this camp, and it breaks my heart what has happened.
By all accounts, it was a magical place, and that's the word that's used so much. What was your favorite memory there?
Probably horseback riding.
Oh my gosh.
That was amazing. And the best memory was really the friends. I mean, all the girls together. You make a family.
Yeah.
I have great memories of just being a kid and having fun and running around with my friends.
Just thinking about Camp Mystic is obviously an actual camp that you've gone to, but it's also a placeholder for so many Houstonians about these traditions that we have as Texans. We always go camping, and where you're making these friendships, this community building. And that's why it's hitting so many people. And it's hard to process like what's going on just because of the memories that we're making with our kids and that we've made as well at different camps.
Yeah, of course. I mean, just to be able to get these opportunities to go swimming, fishing, horseback riding, camping, it's just so important for kids.
It's been a hard week, obviously, for so many of the families that were impacted by the flooding, losing their children, counselors, staff members. But for you, having that connection to Camp Mystic, how have you been processing it all?
It's a connection to Camp Mystic, and it's also a connection to being a mom. I think moms everywhere, regardless if you went to Mystic or not, are just completely heartbroken. I can't fathom the pain. I can't imagine the pain. So I'm a first-time mom to a beautiful baby girl that just turned 1, and
Oh,
I'm already thinking, is she going to be a Kiowa like my mom or a Tonkawa like me? So it really hits hard as a mom, and it hits hard being a camper at Mystic, because the most brave thing you're supposed to do as a kid is, to leave home for that short period. That's already so brave and taking a risk, and to go and to have fun with your friends. So it just hurts on all levels. It hurts being a camper and the magical memories that I've made there and the magical memories that campers go to experience. And then anyone who's been to summer camp is feeling it. It's just devastating.
and I know you're sharing some of that magic and you're helping the city of Houston by sharing green ribbons for Camp Mystic around the southwest part of town. Tell me about that. What's the message that you're trying to send with the ribbons?
Love and support. And it really all started with one ribbon. I tied a big green ribbon around my tree, and our cul-de-sac street has a group chat with all the girls. So I sent a message, if you want ribbon tied around your tree, let me know. And just everyone jumped in. It's just a way that community can be together to show our love. I believe in the power of love and the
Hmm.
power of community and the power of prayer. So, and then from there, I ran out of green ribbon, and a mom came up to me and gave me 100 yards of green ribbon, so much more.
Wow.
And then it continued to spread. And then I went on the Facebook West University Moms group and did a post, and
Hmm.
my direct messages and the comment section on that post are just overflowed, which just shows how many people this has affected and how many people want to show their support. So
Hmm.
I've been going around tying green ribbons, and with that, I've already had strangers come up to me to help me tie the ribbon, or asking, hey, can you also tie ribbon on my house? Or thank you so much. And everyone just wants to come together. To me, it's one way to help.
That's it. And, I'm thinking about all of the victims from this tragedy. We learned, unfortunately, that Greta Toronzo, who lived in Timber Grove and attended Sinclair Elementary, we talked about her earlier this week on the podcast. She unfortunately passed away from the floods. And, these ribbons, I'm so happy that you're doing that, because it's not only a way to spread the message of love, but also remembering the victims, the children, the counselors, the support staff that was there. And that's one way to get through this. And I'm so glad the community stepped up to help you out as well. I know that probably helped you a little bit.
It really did. And even driving around, seeing other homes, I'm seeing just an abundance of homes of people tying ribbon. People are also tying red ribbon, blue ribbon, and pink ribbon. So it's one way to show I'm here with you. I stand with you. I'm here to give love and support. All we can do is give love however you want to give that love. Tying a ribbon around your tree, that's one way to do it. Whatever way you can,
Hmm.
sending a prayer, sending hope,
Yeah.
just knowing that community is with you. If you're hurting, you can see green ribbons. We're hurting together and we're sending love together.
Rachel, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Raheel.
Up next, I'm talking to Chris Tomlinson about why he feels like this tragedy could have been avoided. Looking for a getaway that's equal parts relaxation and adventure? Then it's time to choose your chill at Margaritaville Lake Resort, Lake Conroe, Houston. Right now, you can pick from 3 amazing offers to match your perfect escape, like stay longer and save more. That means more time to unwind and enjoy everything Margaritaville has to offer, like my favorite, hanging out by the resort-style pool with a cold drink. And if you're looking for a weekday retreat, Margaritaville Lake Resort has you covered. Book a weekday stay and score a $50 credit to use on spa treatments, dining, and more at the resort. And for our everyday heroes like nurses, teachers, first responders, and military personnel, you can relax lakeside with a special $99 heroes rate. No matter how you chill, there's a deal with your name on it. And it's all just an easy 1-hour drive north of Houston. So what are you waiting for? Head to Margaritaville Resort, LakeConroe.com and choose your chill today. Follow the yellow brick road to the George Theater and let the adventure begin, because The Wizard of Oz the musical is now playing live on stage at the George Theater until August 10th. I can already hear myself singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow as I step into the land of Oz with Dorothy, the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and of course the Cowardly Lion in this beloved classic. Here's the best part. They have sensory-friendly performances, closed caption performances, an all-ages performance on August 9th, and matinees and evening shows, as well as one double feature day where they'll screen the film. How cool is that? Do something special with your kids, friends, loved ones, or make it a solo date and check out The Wizard of Oz, the musical, at the George Theater. Tickets are going fast, so grab yours today at adplayers.org or call the box office at 713-526-2721. Like me, you're probably looking for some good road trips to make the most out of summer. Well, let me tell you about Port Aransas. My family and I spent a weekend there, and we can't wait to go back because Port A is such a unique beach town. First, almost everybody rolls around the island in golf carts. It is so cool. Second, you can make sun-soaked memories by hanging out on the beach all day or mix it up and try your hand at some surfing or parasailing. We did that and the entire family loved it. Or you can go fishing with one of the many charters setting sail from the harbor. Port A has something for everyone, and it's an easy drive from Houston, making it a great road trip destination. One visit and you'll see why generations of Texans have anchored their traditions to the island life. Go to visitportaransas.com and plan your trip to Texas's beach. Chris, this has been such a terrible tragedy, and you wrote a very, very strong opinion piece about how this could have been avoided. And you're saying that state leaders ignored warning signs and were, quote, intentionally unprepared. Why is that?
We have known for generations that this part of Texas is flash flood alley. I grew up learning about it when I was a kid, when I was learning how to camp. This kind of storm and this kind of flooding is not a mystery. We also saw a flood along the Blanco River 10 years ago that was a model for what we could expect along the Guadalupe. So county officials and state officials have been talking about this problem and the need for a warning system for a decade. And they chose not to spend $1 million, which was all it was going to cost, to make sure that these kids' lives were protected.
And that $1 million, what exactly would that have done?
So after the flooding on the Blanco River, Comal County spent about $300,000 to install a siren warning system with sensors upstream so that when the water rose quickly, it would set off sirens in the basin that would signal campers to get out of the river bottoms. Kerr County commissioners toured this facility in 2016 and knew that to do it in Kerr County would cost about $1 million. They had an engineering firm check it out, and then they held hearings where they decided that they just didn't want to spend that kind of money.
Oh, wow. And that came down to the voters, the local officials. Who said no when that was up for vote or debate? Why?
So it was the county commission led by the county judge, who is currently Bob Kelly. You know, when you read the transcript of the debate, they just didn't want to spend the money. One commissioner said, why should we spend this kind of money for out-of-towners who are sleeping too close to the river anyway? It was their problem, not the county commission's problem to spend the money. Now, to be fair, the county staff did apply for 2 grants from the state, one from the governor's emergency office, one from the Texas Water Development Board, but state officials rejected both of those grant applications. And that's when the commission decided, well, we're just not going to spend the money.
And I want to go back to that 2015 flood, by the way, just to highlight that flood did claim 13 lives. So it was a deadly flood, right? And as you mentioned, it's something to look at and figure out next steps on a state level, local level. Like, we can't let this happen again. And yet here we are. But I do want to ask you about, if there were sirens for this past flood, would those sirens have saved lives? Because this was a very generational flood, as we always hear, right? Like, after a deadly tragedy, it's like, this was a once in a lifetime flood. Do you think it would have saved lives?
Well, I'm sure it would have saved lives because similar systems have saved lives elsewhere in Texas and around the world. I think it's also wrong to say this is a once-in-a-lifetime flood. The U.S. Geological Survey said that they took climate data, they took the river data and past flooding patterns and warned in 2019, you can expect 20% worse flooding in the future because
Wow.
of global warming, because of climate change. But we have state leaders who deny that climate change is real. The county commissioners in Kerr County deny climate change is real. They ignore the scientists who are telling them that this is the future, that these are no longer once in a lifetime floods. We're going to have more of them. And if you look around the world, there have been similar rain bombs every year causing so-called once in a lifetime flooding. Well, this is climate change, and climate change is accelerating, and these kinds of storms will only become more common.
And we just wrapped up the 89 state legislature, and state lawmakers actually considered a bill that would have developed emergency response systems for our natural disasters in Texas, not just the central Texas area, across the state, because of what you just laid out. But not surprising at all, it failed in the Senate. And our state leaders are basically backing up what they're saying with their actions now. Do you know why it failed?
The House made this a priority bill. It was House Bill 13. Any bill with a number that low means it's one of their top priorities to get these kinds of warning systems across the state. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick said no. He wanted to spend more money on property tax relief. And so the bill died in the Senate Finance Committee. It was all about giving the wealthy landowners tax breaks instead of protecting campers and children and people who love the great outdoors.
Yeah, so the tax breaks hit and the system has not passed. But now we are hearing from Republican leaders and local officials in Kerr County. We are hearing from State Senator Paul Betancourt, a leading Republican from right here in Houston. So there are some Houston ties to this. He's saying he'll file a bill to bring back civil defense sirens for areas that are at high risk for flash flooding, which would be Central Texas. I think that would include our areas as well. So I'm confused on this because one part of what we just talked about is no, this isn't going to work out. And now because of this tragedy, they're saying, okay, let's revisit this. What's happening with that?
This is the pattern with our state leaders. Until people die, they won't do anything. Until people suffer, they won't do anything. We had massive power outages in 2011 that told us that the grid was broken. They did nothing until after Winter Storm Uri. We knew that the wires and poles in the Houston area that were owned and operated by CenterPoint were in bad shape. But we didn't do anything about it till after Hurricane Beryl. These leaders are more than happy to just, wait until there's a crisis to do what's right. And what angers me is how they pretend that there was no warning. There were warnings all along. They just chose to put their hands over their ears and go, la, 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 I can't hear you. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and let's talk about those warnings. The meteorologists, how did you think they did in all of this? With all the emergency messages, what did you think about the warnings?
Well, the National Weather Service district that covers that area is down 30% in staffing. And much of that was a result of the Department of Government Efficiency cuts, encouraging senior people to retire and to quit and driving people out of the National Weather Service. They issued warnings the best they could. There was plenty of warning, as the chief meteorologist for AccuWeather said. We gave plenty of warning to evacuate those campers. But, you also need to have a way for those people to receive that information. You can send stuff out on Twitter or post it on Facebook. But, if people don't have their phones on, if they're asleep at night, there's got to be another way to deal with it.
And that's where the disconnect happened, right? Is also in Central Texas. If you've never camped there, the signal is spotty. Let's just be honest. It is spotty in a lot of areas. Camp Mystic, of course, our hearts go out to all of the families that were impacted by this, with children passing away, counselors, staff members. They didn't have phones, but I'm sure somebody there on the staff was monitoring all of this because the warnings did go out earlier in the day that this could be something to watch out for. But that disconnect of we can issue all of these warnings, but if nobody's receiving them, this is where the sirens come in, right? Like we just go old school and you just blare these sirens. So it's like there's just so many failures.
I'm an old soldier, right? I served in the Army, and I guess my reaction to this kind of tragedy is to get angry and to fight back, which I guess is where this column is coming from. I have enormous sympathy for the families. I understand that the elected officials who neglected to do their job are going to have to live with that for the rest of their lives. But, we are talking about human beings, and we have to develop systems that are redundant in ways that you can't sleep through an alert on your phone and the result is that 30 children die. That's not an acceptable system if that's the outcome. So, we have to take into account different layers to ensure that you can only ignore it so far, before it becomes so urgent that you feel compelled to do something.
And as we've already talked about, after tragedy, we always hear our state leaders, make a fuss about it. That's the best way to put it. As Hurricane Beryl, we did an episode with your colleague, Claire Howe, about how state leaders made this big ruckus about Centerpoint's going to have to pay. Centerpoint's going to have to pay. A year later, there was no accountability, basically, right? And I'm going to link that in the show notes if you want to listen to it. But no shock at all. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick was on Fox News, and he's now talking about potentially safety measures. Let's listen to that clip, and I want to get your thoughts.
About the flash flood, but had we had sirens along this area, up and down, the same type of sirens that they have in Israel when there's an attack coming, that would have blown very loudly, it's possible that would have saved some of these lives. And so if the city can't afford it, then the state will step up, and we need to have these in place by the next summer.
What are your thoughts, Chris?
We told you, Dan. We told you. House Bill 13 told you. A decade's worth of experience in New Braunfels and Comal County. Why do you only care after people are dead and you're being held accountable? The other thing that frustrates me is the number of people who are saying, oh, it's too soon to talk about accountability. Wait, don't talk about this now because they don't want to be held accountable. This is the worst kind of politics.
It's so heartbreaking, right? And we hear our elected officials do this all the time. That, it's almost like pandering that, if there were sirens there, then they would have been saved. Well, as you mentioned, you knew about the sirens. And if you didn't, then you're not doing your job in the legislature. That's so frustrating. I can't even imagine if I'm a parent hearing that clip going, if they had sirens, but of course, you could have put those sirens in. Even if the local community didn't want them, the state could have done this. Make it make sense.
Well, and the local community did want them. And that's the tragedy here. But at the same time, this is what happens when you have a single party state where the people in power are not worried about losing their reelections. They don't have to take care of their constituents because they don't fear losing their jobs. And until they do, I don't think we're going to see much change.
Do you think that's part of the broader problem here? Like when you think about the constant disasters we have here in our state leadership, is that one of the factors? Is that the main factor? What is it?
Yes, in a democracy, it is all about whether or not our leaders could risk losing their jobs. I worked as a foreign correspondent for 20 years. I worked in many totalitarian regimes, lived in countries that did not have elections. And this is the kind of thing you would see in those places where the regime does not care until people start dying. And then they'll do the bare minimum to alleviate the anger and the threat to their regime. If Dan Patrick were really worried about his job, we would not have had a Hurricane Beryl situation. We would not have had a Winter Storm Uri situation. We wouldn't have children drowning along the Guadalupe River for lack of $1 million, when this is the man who has spent $4 billion sending National Guard troops and state troopers to the border in what was little more than a campaign commercial for Donald Trump's reelection.
Perfectly said, Chris. Before I let you go, the lessons that we're learning right now from Central Texas, the aftermath, maybe the lack of preparedness, how does this apply to Houston? What can we learn? How can we be better prepared here in Houston?
Well, I would ask every Houstonian to ask their leaders, their city council members, their county commissioners, are we ready for another Hurricane Harvey? If 52 inches of rain were to fall on Houston in 24 hours this coming September, do we think we're going to be better off than we were, in 2017? There is a real risk of greater storms due to climate change. And until we acknowledge climate change is real and we prepare for storms worse than what we've ever seen before, we're going to be at risk. That's what Houstonians should be worried about.
Chris, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
That was Chris Tomlinson of the Houston Chronicle, along with Rachel Kherkher. I've linked Chris's story in our show notes. For more on the Central Texas floods, please subscribe to our daily newsletter with the info in our show notes, and subscribe to the show as well as we continue to cover this terrible tragedy. That will do it for today. I'm Raheel Ramzanali. Thank you for listening.